The story begins with a first officer named Ben, whose wife calls him to return home. Both are suffering because their son is sick, and she asks him to stop running away. Nearby, a passenger named Dan is standing in the middle of the airport while smoke rises from a faulty charging cable. He stuffs a power bank into his red bag, even though carrying it that way is strictly prohibited in checked luggage. As Ben walks along, he sees a little girl named Cora who is afraid of flying. She asks him if he is the captain, but Ben replies that he is the first officer, to which Cora responds by asking if he isn't too old not to be a captain, and Ben answers that life makes you take a few detours. Cora is traveling with her father, stepmother, and stepbrother. Her mother has placed a GPS tracker on her clothes, and Cora can track her location from her phone. Out of pure negligence, the red bag passes the scans and is loaded into a ULD cargo container. Also traveling on this flight from Los Angeles to Shanghai is a group of esports players. An American player begins to mock the Chinese players, so the team captain steps in to defend his teammate until the coach takes the American aside and apologizes. The pilot of this flight is an elderly man named Richard. The plane takes off from Los Angeles, and here we learn that Ben was expelled from the Air Force for raising his hand against a superior who was not following protocols correctly. He lost his entire pension and benefits, and that is how he ended up as a first officer for a second-rate airline. The female player Lily asks her captain, Sam, why he is so afraid to read her letter. Sam replies that he is not afraid and that he will read it once they return to China. Then he gets up and goes to the bathroom, where he had Lily's letters safely stored inside his phone case. Elsewhere, Cora's father pleads with her, asking if it would kill her to be a little nicer to her brother Finn, but Cora does not listen, as she clearly hates her stepmother. Her father gets up and goes to the bathroom, and his stepmother follows him. Meanwhile, inside the ULD container, the faulty charging cable sparks a fire. Finn asks Cora where mom and dad are, and she sends him toward the bathrooms, telling him there is a swimming pool there, and that is why they went. Finn wanders into the next compartment, sits next to a man playing a video game, and begins playing with him. In the cockpit, Ben receives a smoke and fire detection alert in the cargo compartment. The instant he sees it, he activates the fire extinguishers, but they do not work as they should, so he radios in to request the nearest suitable airport to land, with the closest being Guam International, 400 nautical miles to the south. Cora heads to the bathroom to call her father. Two officers enter the cargo compartment with fire extinguishers and try to smother the flames, but the fire burns through the straps of the ULD container, causing it to slide forward and crash into some cylinders. The cylinders unleash chaos. A hole rips open in the plane and objects go flying, striking the passengers, but Lily manages to hold onto Cora. Oxygen masks drop in front of all the passengers. However, Cora's parents lie unconscious in the bathroom. Flying debris begins to knock people out, but Richard descends the plane to a safe altitude and announces that passengers can now remove their masks. Dan stands up from his seat. Sam runs from the bathroom toward Lily, but a flight attendant makes him sit down a short distance away because running like that is dangerous. Dan sits in the bathroom to smoke. The burning container crashes into the engine, destroying it and ripping a massive hole in the side of the plane, causing people to start falling into the void. The flight controls stop responding, and at that moment they are over the open ocean. The second engine also catches fire, losing power and the radio. Ben deploys the ram air turbine, and the instruments turn back on. Cora runs toward her parents, but a flight attendant holds her back. Richard decides to make a forced water landing and orders Ben to start dumping fuel, while announcing to everyone to brace for impact. The passengers lower their heads, but the plane continues to fall rapidly. Richard and Ben argue over how to pull it off. Ben tells Richard to turn the plane to land parallel to the ocean waves, and they attempt to slow the aircraft down. Richard asks Ben to move his seat all the way back and tighten his harness. Everyone screams in fear, and the plane impacts directly against the ocean. As it slides, it crashes into underwater rocks. One of its wings breaks off. The plane flips completely over, and it splits into two separate sections. Water begins to flood the plane, and more people die from the impact. Shortly after, the shattered wreckage of the plane and lifeless bodies float adrift in the ocean. Survivors scream for help. In the cockpit, Richard is unconscious and the glass is about to give way under the water pressure. The flight attendant Penny has kept a hold of Cora the entire time. Cora observes the scene from the wrecked plane, seeing that the three sections of the aircraft are very far apart from each other. Penny tells Cora to stay where she is and enters the cockpit, where Ben is trying to free Richard. Richard regains consciousness and tells Ben to try to free him by cutting him loose with the emergency axe. In the middle section of the plane, Sam realizes that Lily is not in her seat, and seeing that the people there are gravely injured, begins shouting her name. The last section of the plane floats upside down in the water. Finn is with a man, and the flight attendant Zoe is also there. Lily swims through the water and manages to climb onto a broken piece of the plane with her leg bleeding profusely. Back in the cockpit, they fail to free Richard, and the glass could shatter at any second. Ben cannot amputate his leg because he would bleed to death. Richard orders him to close the door and get out so that the water stays trapped in the cockpit instead of flooding the entire deck, telling him, "It's your plane now, Ben. Go home and be with your son." As Ben leaves, Richard asks him to check the emergency locator transmitter, YLT. Ben observes the view outside. In the last section of the plane, most people have already died, and the entire structure hangs upside down under the water. In the bathroom, Finn's mother comes to and wakes up Cora's father, but the instant they open the bathroom door, water rushes in with force. Richard stays in the cockpit looking at a photo of his family until the glass breaks and the water takes him too. In the last section, an elderly woman named Becky still has a pulse and regains consciousness. They will have to climb higher because the water is rising. Every plane carries an YLT, and right now it should be in the middle section. To check if it activated on its own, Ben would have to swim over there. So he decides to swim and leave the raft for Penny and Cora. However, Penny asks him to let her go instead because she used to be a professional swimmer. Cora wants to go with her, desperate to find her parents and brother, but Penny tells her to stay there and look after her. Shoes before diving in. After she leaves, Cora spots sharks in the water. They shout, "Sharks, sharks," to Penny, but she cannot understand a single word. Ben launches the raft into the water, and together with Cora, they head toward Penny. Meanwhile, the survivors in the last section are only alive because they are trapped in an air pocket. If they open the door to escape, the section will sink and they will die. On the surface, the shark has closed in on Penny. She hears Cora's approaching voice warning her about the sharks, but at that exact instant, the shark attacks her. Ben tries to pull Penny onto the raft, but fails to save her. The shark also lunges at their raft, but Ben drives it away by striking it with an oar. In the middle section of the plane, everyone crowds into a corner, and the shift in weight causes the piece of the plane to slide forward a bit. A woman falls into the water, but manages to get up quickly. In the section that is upside down, Zoe places a bandage on Matt's injured hand, and they try to calm little Finn, who won't stop crying. In the middle section, Sam tells everyone that some of them need to get back into the water to shed weight, since they are on top of a coral reef and need to relieve the pressure on it. However, the American player Hutch refuses to listen and the two clash again, though even Hutch's coach admits Sam is right. Jesse, Hutch's teammate, is willing to move to the water's edge, but Hutch is not. The piece Lily was on drifts away, so she has to swim with her injured leg until she finally reaches the middle section and reunites with Sam. Just at that moment, a shark attacks the coach. Jesse tries to save him, but also falls victim to the shark. Hutch begins to blame Sam for everything that happened and starts punching him, but Ben arrives at that exact moment and separates them. In the final section, Zoe says she can swim down to look for an exit, but Matt insists he will do it despite having a broken wrist. Becky begs him not to go, but he slides into the water with only one functional hand, makes his way under the plane, and reaches the surface, starting to scream for help. And there he finds Cora's father, whom a shark devours the next moment. Matt screams for help. Back in the middle section, Ben tells everyone they are lucky to be alive, as there were 293 people on the plane, and now he can only count about 30. They have rafts there, and Ben searches for the YLT while Cora searches the plane looking for her father. Ben turns on the YLT and hands it to Dan to hold, then saves Cora from a shark in the other corner. However, one of their rafts drifts away and water floods the middle section. In the middle of the chaos, Dan drops the YLT into the water. Sam was further away, clinging to a suitcase, and places the unconscious Hutch on top of it. Ben asks Dan for the YLT, but Dan has already lost it and tells him that if it was so important, Ben should have kept it himself. Cora sees Sam swimming in the distance, and Ben will have to save them too. Just then, the sharks surround them. Dan does not want to take the raft over there because he doesn't want to risk his life. He punches Ben, telling him that all of this happened because of him, but Ben punches him back and tells him they are going for them, forcing Dan to come along. The sharks were circling Sam and Hutch, but Ben arrives and saves them both just in time. Meanwhile, in the inverted section, they can no longer wait for Matt. Becky refuses to leave and only asks Zoe to take Finn. Zoe promises she will come back for her and moves forward with Finn, finding Matt's lifeless body along the way. The two manage to reach the surface of the ocean, and nearby, the raft that hadn't deployed had floated toward them. At that moment, Lily sees a plane flying overhead, and everyone signals for help, but the plane does not see them. Over there, Zoe opens the raft and is about to pull Finn in when sharks attack her, but they begin to fight among themselves. Zoe quickly pulls Finn onto the raft and then gets in herself with a wounded, bleeding leg before losing consciousness. Finn screams for help, left completely alone. Suddenly, the raft begins to shake from below, and when Finn leans over to look, a shark rams it, leaving him hanging off the edge. In the inverted section, the water is already up to Becky's neck. She thinks of her granddaughter and says she will ask God to fill her life with joy. Just at that instant, a rescue helicopter approaches looking for them, and they also contact a Chinese fishing boat, informing them that a plane has crashed near their position and that their help is needed to rescue the survivors. On the raft, Hutch notices Sam staring at Lily and tells him to just confess his feelings, but Sam didn't want to because there was a rule forbidding players from dating each other. Hutch replies that nobody pays attention to that rule. Cora finally understands that her family did not survive. Her father had asked her to look after Finn and she didn't do it, even though he is only 7 years old. Ben mentions to her that his own son is also 7 years old and shows Cora an old photo of him. Just then, the rescue helicopter approaches them and a rescue swimmer begins to descend to save them. Ben waves his arms and shouts no, but they do not understand his warning, and the moment the rescue swimmer touches the ocean, a shark attacks him. They hoist him back up, but the shark leaps and catches him in its jaws. The cable still attached to him drags the helicopter, causing it to spin out of control until it crashes as well. The impact flips their raft and everyone falls into the water. Trying to get back up, Dan pushes a flight attendant into the water and the sharks devour her. Just at that moment, the Chinese boat arrives, though it cannot get very close because it cannot pass the reef due to the water being too shallow. Ben will have to take the raft toward them, but they have no oars. Ben realizes that Cora is not on the raft either, but is far away, standing on a broken piece of the plane. Ben swims through the water toward her to save her, while a shark follows closely behind him. Ben climbs onto the piece of the plane and asks Cora to come with him, but Cora says she wants to stay there with her dad. Ben tells her they have to take a little detour, straps her to his body, and begins to swim forward. The water around them is plagued with sharks. Seeing this, the Chinese fisherman orders that all the caught fish be thrown into the water so the sharks get distracted by the food. Even so, the sharks close in on Ben and Cora. Ben attacks one of them with a flared gun, and fortunately, the rest of the sharks head toward the boat to feed on the fish. Dan sees a pack of cigarettes floating nearby, grabs it, lies back on the edge of the raft, and begins to smoke. Right there, a shark makes him its prey, devouring him while he was smoking, and his death matters to no one. Everyone else is rescued. Sam confesses to Lily that he never read her letter and that by now it must be at the bottom of the ocean, but Lily knows perfectly well that he did read it and is holding back because of the rules. Sam then kisses her on the forehead. Ben approaches Cora. In the next moment, everyone's phones regain a signal. Cora asks Ben for his phone and searches for the location of Finn's tracker. They head toward the spot and find a raft with an unconscious Zoe inside, but she wakes up and uncovers Finn, who was lying next to her. Cora and Finn are reunited, and Cora asks for his forgiveness. At the end of the story, we learn that Ben's son has cancer. He calls his wife, speaks with his son, and tells him, "I'm coming home." And with that, the story comes to an end right here.